Imagine you are sitting in a room confident that you already know how the world works. You believe the same powers will keep ruling, the same systems will keep dominating, and the same players will always stay on top. And then, suddenly, the game changes. Not slowly, not quietly, but in a way that makes you ask, did we miss something? That is exactly what happened in 2025. A country that many in the West had underestimated, overlooked, and even dismissed has stepped forward and changed the balance of power. That country is Pakistan. For years, people thought of it only in terms of problems, instability, or dependency, but what they failed to see was a young nation, a resilient people, and a leadership that decided not to play by old rules anymore. Today, we are going to talk about how Pakistan has made a move so surprising, so strategic, that it has forced the West, especially Europe, to rethink its role in the New World Order. And let me tell you, this is not just about geopolitics or economics. This is about vision, courage, and the ability to turn disadvantages into strengths. Stay with me until the very end of this speech, because by the time we finish, you will not only understand why Pakistan's rise matters, you will see how it represents a shift that affects all of us. This is not the story of one nation. This is the story of how the world is changing right in front of our eyes. And the question we must all ask is, are we ready for it? In 2025, Pakistan's geography is no longer just a matter of maps and borders. It has transformed into one of its most valuable assets. For decades, the world recognized Pakistan's location as important, but few truly understood how much power could be unlocked from sitting at the crossroads of South Asia, the Middle East, and Central Asia. What was once seen as a challenge, surrounded by complex neighbors and unstable politics, has been reimagined into a source of influence that directly shapes the flow of trade, energy, and strategic power. This is not about geography as destiny, but about how a nation decides to use its location to rewrite its place in the world order. Pakistan now connects markets that are critical to Europe's future. The Middle East provides the energy Europe relies on. Central Asia carries untapped resources and new trade potential, and China has emerged as a global economic competitor. Pakistan sits in the middle of all three, acting as the bridge no one can bypass. The revival of old trade routes, such as those echoing the Silk Road, along with the modernization of ports like Wadar and connectivity projects with Central Asia, has made Pakistan an unavoidable corridor for goods, data, and even digital highways. Europe, which once only looked to Washington or Beijing for economic direction, must now acknowledge that Islamabad is shaping part of the route their future prosperity depends on. What makes this transformation surprising is how Pakistan turned challenges into leverage. Instead of being trapped between bigger powers, it used that very position to make itself indispensable to all of them. China sees it as a gateway to the Middle East. The Gulf states view it as a reliable partner for trade and defense. Central Asian nations depend on it for access to warm waters. And even Europe, whether it likes it or not, must pay attention, because secure and affordable supply chains now require Pakistani cooperation. This reimagining of geography has also shifted the balance of negotiations. Pakistan is no longer in the position of asking for favors. It is in the position of offering solutions. By controlling strategic choke points, energy corridors, and transit hubs, Pakistan's importance is magnified beyond its size or economy. In 2025, the map looks the same, But the meaning of that map has changed completely, turning Pakistan's geography into a currency of global influence that the West can no longer afford to ignore. In 2025, the real surprise for the West did not come from military maneuvers or political rhetoric, but from Pakistan's bold economic transformation through trade and energy corridors. For decades, the global system was built around Western-controlled routes, institutions, and financial networks. Yet, Pakistan quietly restructured its role in the global economy, turning its geographic and diplomatic strengths into engines of growth that no longer depend solely on Western approval. The development of new trade corridors has shifted not just the flow of goods, but also the flow of influence, giving Pakistan a position of strength in negotiations with both East and West. One of the biggest turning points was the expansion of the China-Pakistan economic corridor into a multi-directional hub that now links Central Asia, the Middle East, and even provides a new gateway for Europe. Gwadar Port, once viewed as an ambitious experiment, has matured into a functioning trade lifeline that reduces shipping costs and bypasses choke points dominated by Western powers. Pipelines connecting energy-rich states of Central Asia and the Gulf to this port have made Pakistan a key transit state for oil and gas, allowing Asian and European markets to diversify away from Western-controlled supply lines. This alone has altered the dynamics of global energy pricing and weakened Western leverage over critical resources. Beyond physical trade, Pakistan has also embraced economic partnerships that the West once ignored or underestimated. Deals with Turkey, Iran, and Central Asian republics have created a parallel economic ecosystem that does not rely exclusively on Western markets. Even Europe finds itself compelled to engage because ignoring these routes means higher costs and missed opportunity. Pakistan's ability to create economic corridors has made it not just a beneficiary of global trade, but also a regulator of its direction. The psychological shock for Western observers is not just that Pakistan has become economically relevant, but that it did so without following the traditional Western model of dependency. Instead of waiting for aid or foreign loans to define its growth, it used partnerships and infrastructure projects to build leverage that others now depend upon. This move is a reminder that in the 21st century, economic strength is not always about how much capital you have, but about how much connectivity you control. Pakistan's rise as an economic corridor has forced the West to acknowledge a shift in the world's supply chains, and with it, a shift in the balance of power. In 2025, one of the most unexpected transformations that caught the West off guard was Pakistan's leap into the digital and technological sphere. For years, the global narrative portrayed Pakistan as a country struggling with traditional challenges of governance, security, and economy, while technology was seen as a domain dominated by Silicon Valley, Europe, and East Asia. Yet, quietly and strategically, Pakistan invested in digital infrastructure, artificial intelligence, fintech, and entrepreneurial ecosystems that have reshaped its image from a developing economy into a serious player in the technology race. This was not an overnight success, but the result of years of groundwork that finally bore fruit, surprising even those who had written Pakistan off as incapable of innovation. The digital transformation began with widespread government-backed initiatives to create a robust IT ecosystem, offering incentives for startups, easing regulations for foreign investors, and fostering a new generation of tech-savvy entrepreneurs. In parallel, the expansion of high-speed internet access across rural and urban areas allowed millions of young people to participate in the digital economy. This democratization of technology unleashed an unexpected wave of innovation. Pakistani fintech platforms began to rival established Western players by providing low-cost, AI-driven financial solutions to millions of unbanked citizens, not just domestically, but across Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia. This positioned Pakistan as a hub for financial inclusion technologies at a scale the West had underestimated. Artificial intelligence became another frontier where Pakistan advanced rapidly. Partnerships with China, Turkey, and even independent European firms enabled the transfer of knowledge and resources that accelerated domestic AI development. Pakistani engineers and researchers began producing solutions in healthcare, education, agriculture, and defense that directly addressed the needs of emerging economies, something Western tech giants often overlooked in their pursuit of profit. By building scalable, cost-to-echo, and localized digital tools, Pakistan tapped into markets that were hungry for alternatives to Western-controlled platforms. What truly shocked the West was not just the presence of Pakistani startups on the global stage, but their ability to attract investment and customers from regions traditionally tied to Western tech ecosystems. As companies from Karachi to Islamabad began securing billion-dollar valuations and exporting digital solutions abroad, Pakistan moved from being a consumer of foreign technology to a contributor shaping the global digital economy. The shift challenged the monopoly of Western innovation and forced Europe to acknowledge that Pakistan's digital leap was not temporary hype, but a structural transformation of the world's technological balance. In 2025, Pakistan's pursuit of defense and strategic autonomy has become one of the most defining aspects of its rise, creating ripples that the West did not fully anticipate. For decades, Pakistan was often portrayed as reliant on Western military assistance, tied to conditions and pressured by alliances that limited its freedom of action. But over the past few years, it has shifted course, building an independent framework for its defense strategy while forming partnerships that strengthen its sovereignty. This transformation is not just about acquiring weapons or building an army. It is about rewriting the rules of security in a world where multipolar power is replacing unilateral dominance. One of the most remarkable developments has been Pakistan's progress in indigenous defense production. Rather than depending on Western suppliers, Pakistan invested in research, local manufacturing, and technology transfers from non-traditional partners. Advanced drone programs, cyber defense capabilities, and smart missile systems have placed Pakistan in a league where it can secure its own borders and project strength regionally without seeking Western approval. This has not only elevated its credibility, but also reduced vulnerabilities that once gave outside powers leverage over its policies. At the same time, Pakistan's alliances have diversified in ways that alarm the West. Close military cooperation with China and Turkey has created new frameworks for joint exercises, intelligence sharing, and technology co-development. Partnerships with Gulf states in security and defense have deepened, giving Pakistan both financial backing and strategic access in the Middle East. Even Central Asian states, once overlooked, now view Pakistan as a reliable partner for counterterrorism and regional security. By aligning itself with emerging powers and creating multi-layered security ties, Pakistan has ensured that it is no longer isolated or dependent on any single bloc. The West is particularly unsettled by Pakistan's focus on strategic autonomy, meaning its ability to make sovereign defense decisions without external interference. Nuclear deterrence remains a cornerstone of its security, but now it is complemented by advancements in space surveillance, electronic warfare, and hybrid defense strategies. These developments signal that Pakistan is not simply defending itself, but actively shaping its security architecture in line with its national interests. This evolution has reshaped Pakistan's role in global geopolitics. No longer seen as a junior partner or a security recipient, it now positions itself as a proactive player capable of influencing regional stability and protecting its sovereignty on its own terms. This newfound independence in defense has forced the West to reassess not only its strategies toward Pakistan, but also its assumptions about who truly holds leverage in South Asia and beyond. In 2025, the shifting of global alliances has turned into one of Pakistan's most powerful moves, signaling a reality the West had not fully prepared for. For much of the modern era, the international system was shaped by the dominance of Western-led institutions and alliances, where smaller states were expected to align themselves accordingly. Pakistan, too, was long viewed as a nation tethered between Western influence and regional dependency. But today, that perception has dramatically changed. Pakistan has strategically positioned itself at the center of new partnerships that go beyond the traditional East versus West divide, creating an ecosystem where the balance of power is no longer dictated by a single bloc. One of the most striking features of this shift has been Pakistan's ability to simultaneously deepen ties with China, Russia, Turkey, the Gulf states, and Central Asia, while keeping channels open with Europe. Rather than being locked into dependency, Pakistan has created overlapping partnerships that maximize its options and reduce its vulnerabilities. For example, cooperation with China has brought infrastructure and technology, while engagement with Russia has opened new energy and defense avenues. Collaboration with Turkey and Gulf states has offered both financial backing and cultural affinity. Meanwhile, Pakistan's outreach to Central Asia has given it a vital role in connecting emerging economies to the wider world. These overlapping alliances ensure that Pakistan is no longer reliant on one patron, but instead becomes a bridge between multiple power centers. This approach has given Pakistan a unique advantage in negotiations. Instead of being pressured into choices that limit its autonomy, it now has the flexibility to pivot between partners depending on its national interest. Where once Western capitals could influence policy through aid or sanctions, today Pakistan's alternatives, partners willing to support it without imposing the same political strings. This diversification has not only strengthened Pakistan's independence, but has also forced larger powers to treat it with greater respect. For the West, this represents more than just Pakistan's rise. It symbolizes the broader decline of Western monopoly in global affairs. The emergence of a multipolar world means countries like Pakistan are no longer seen as peripheral, but as central players in shaping the flow of trade, energy, and security. The ability to build trust with multiple partners while avoiding overdependence has given Pakistan a new kind of leverage. In this realignment of alliances, Pakistan has become a pivot. And in doing so, it has made clear that the West no longer writes the rules of engagement alone. In 2025, perhaps the most profound effect of Pakistan's unexpected rise has been the psychological shock it delivered to the West. For decades, Pakistan was seen as a struggling state, burdened by political instability, economic challenges, and an over-dependence on foreign aid. Western policymakers and analysts often underestimated its capacity to adapt and reinvent itself. Yet, what unfolded in recent years defied these assumptions, leaving Europe and the broader West facing a sobering reality. Pakistan is no longer a peripheral actor, but a central player in shaping the dynamics of a multipolar world. This shock is rooted in the West's own miscalculations. While attention was heavily focused on China, Russia, and even India, Pakistan quietly built leverage through trade corridors, digital innovation, defense autonomy, and new alliances. The West assumed Pakistan would remain dependent on aid or confined to regional struggles, but instead it leveraged its geography, young population, and partnerships to create a position of influence far beyond expectations. This sudden recognition that a country once written off as unstable is now setting terms in global negotiations has unsettled the old order. For Europe in particular, the realization carries weight. Supply chains, energy routes, and new markets now pass through or depend on Pakistan's cooperation. Where once Europe believed it could pressure Pakistan into compliance, it must now engage with it as a respected partner. The very narrative of who holds leverage has flipped, creating discomfort in Western capitals unaccustomed to sharing influence with nations they once underestimated. Beyond economics and strategy, the shock is also psychological because it challenges long-held Western notions of global hierarchy. Pakistan's rise demonstrates that power is no longer confined to traditional centers, but dispersing across regions previously seen as secondary. This forces a deeper question in the West. If Pakistan can shift its trajectory so dramatically, what does that mean for other nations they consider marginal today? The reality is that Pakistan has not only changed its position, but also altered the mindset of global politics. By surprising the world with its resilience and strategic moves, it has proven that influence in the 21st century is not merely about wealth or military size, but about adaptability, connectivity, and independence. The West now faces the uncomfortable truth that Pakistan has become a decisive factor in the emerging world order, and ignoring this new reality is no longer an option. Ladies and gentlemen, as we reflect on everything we have discussed today, one thing becomes crystal clear. Pakistan's story in 2025 is not just about a single nation's rise, it is about the reshaping of the global order. From reimagining its geography into influence to building powerful trade and energy corridors, to making an unexpected digital leap, Pakistan has shown that innovation and strategy matter more than size or past perceptions. Its growing defense autonomy and bold realignment of alliances have rewritten the rules of engagement, while its surprising ability to shock the West reminds us that no nation should ever be underestimated. The message here is bigger than Pakistan alone. The future belongs to those who adapt, who build connections, and who are brave enough to break away from dependency. This is not game over for anyone. It is game on for those who are willing to embrace a multipolar world with open eyes and open minds. Europe, the West, and indeed the entire global community must now choose how to engage with this new reality, because ignoring it will only leave them behind. I wish you all the clarity to see beyond old assumptions, the courage to embrace change, and the wisdom to turn challenges into opportunities. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your willingness to explore a future that is already unfolding before us. Good luck to all of you, and thank you once again.